everyone out there in YouTube land, Dan here from Geekcast Radio, and it is the most wonderful time of the year, or the ending of what I think is the most wonderful time of the year. This past weekend was Baltimore Comic-Con, and I went again. It's, I don't know, my seventh, eighth year around there, or so going to Baltimore Comic-Con for Geekcast Radio, and it's a very fun time, a lot going on, and I thought because of that, it being a Comic-Con that actually puts comics into the piece of Comic-Con, I'd run down my comic book haul of what I got signed this past year. Some things I kind of know about me going into this is that I'm not one of those collectors that looks for key comics, or I'm not someone gets into speculation. I kind of get things that I'm interested in, that I want to read, I think that might be look cool, or have some sort of sentimental value. Before I get into the new stuff I bought, and I'll be honest, I got some really cool stuff. I got one of my favorite covers of all time, actually two, and some pieces of runs I'm really excited about. But I'll go over some of the comics I got signed there. One of the best things about Baltimore Comic-Con is that it does have a lot of creative talent there. Some huge names in the comic book world. From this year, they had Jim Lee, Brian K. Vaughan, were probably the biggest headliners, but also Tom King, Mitch Gerads, Jeff Lemire, Matt Kent, Greg Pak, Neil Adams, legends like that, Walt Simonson, Ron Mars, Howard Chaykin, a whole long list of comic book legends, people that are big in the industry and up-and-comers as well. And so I got some of my books that I really cherish signed. And thinking about getting comic book signed, I don't think it really adds any value to it. If anything, it's just kind of an excuse to talk to some of your favorite creators. And I'll start with the person I think I had the best conversation with that I actually talked to a few times, which was Matt Kent. And I got a few books signed by him. And this is actually Black Hammer 45 number 1. And this I got signed by not only Matt Kent, but Jeff Lemire, who was there as well, and Charlene Kent, who was Matt Kent's wife, but also the colorist on this, and she does a lot of the coloring for Matt's work. And discussing not so much this book, but probably the book that I really wanted to get signed by him is Black Badge number 1. And I actually got this entire series signed pretty much. He was there 3 days, and I went up every day basically to get a piece of this signed. I don't like doing more than 5 books, but Black Badge, for those that don't know, it's about these kids that do special operations for the government, but they're Boy Scouts, so Black Ops Boy Scouts in a way. Imagine like Delta Force and Apocalypse Now put together, but it's kids. That's kind of Black Badge, and it's done with Matt Kent and Tyler Jenkins, who they did Grass Kings previously to this, and I loved Grass Kings, and that's why I picked up Black Badge. I was talking to him, and I was curious where this idea came from, because in my mind I had this lofty idea that it was this exploration into the way war it impacts kind of the young, and how a war that started by adults ends up being paid for by the kids of future generations, or something along those lines. And he's just like, and he was like, it's basically a joke he had. He's like, why don't Boy Scouts have a black, go on Black Ops missions or do spec missions or things like that? That he said, someone said, like, you should do a comic about that. He's like, no, I shouldn't. And then he did it. So, but it was kind of funny that you think this idea comes from this really serious place, and it's actually just a joke that ends up becoming an actual comic book. But if you did like Grass Kings, you would probably really enjoy Black Badge. The art's a little bit different because it's colored by Hillary Jenkins, who is, again, related to Tyler. And I was talking to Matt, and he actually said that he thinks Tyler Jenkins' art does look a lot better when it's colored by Hillary, who is a professional painter in her own right. I love these covers too. They're always kind of weird and strange. There's also a back piece as well that I'm not going to pull out because I don't feel like. Actually, this one's already taken out, but so I'll do it for this one. But I asked too if they were going to be doing anything. This is one of my favorite ones, little black back cover. And this is cool cardstock too, so it's a really great value because it's just a normal price, doesn't cost anything extra, and you get the cool cardstock cover. But Matt did say that there are going to be doing future projects coming up. That actually was going to be done for Image, and he said another one. I forget who he said. I think another one, Dark Horse, but he is writing them now, and then Tyler just has to draw them. And then they'll be coming out, I guess, sometimes next year. So that was cool to hear. And I mentioned Jeff Lemire, so I did get a number of books signed by him, including issues of Royal City. This is just a cool variant cover that I really enjoyed this series. That series, for people who don't know, it's ultimately this family drama of that occurs after a member of the family is killed, and actually let me back up. The father gets sick and goes to the hospital, and it unravels this history that goes way back into the 90s, where another tragic event happened within the family, and a past death kind of haunts his family to this day, and it explores how that death impacts each individual in different ways. It has kind of a supernatural element to it a little bit, but that just ended up recently, but Jeff Lemire did indicate that he might bring it back. He was thinking about it. I also got some issues of Gideon Falls. This is one of my favorite covers of the series. This was actually done by Christian Ward, and this is issue number 2. Also got Quantum Age signed as well. Again, I didn't get these all signed in one day. I went up once. He was there every day, and I was actually surprised that Jeff Lemire's he had a line here and there, but it was nothing compared to someone like Tom King or Walt Simonson, whose lines were gigantic. I had a few books I wanted to get signed by Walt Simonson, but it took too long. The line was too big. I also got Sentry #1 signed by Jeff Lemire, and this series actually was really great. I know a lot of people hate the Sentry, and I get why, but I think Jeff Lemire showed that you can make a good book out of him, especially when you have kind of the type of style that Jeff Lemire does. Also got a variant cover he did for Hawkeye of the Fantastic Four. And I did ask if he'd be interested in doing the Fantastic Four, and he said he would love the chance, but he wasn't sure if Marvel would let him. And I hope Marvel does let him, because I think that would be great. And I got another variant signed by Jeff Lemire of Royal City, number 6, the Walking Dead variant. I think that was a month celebrating Walking Dead when they had a lot of different covers dedicated to it from different series. Again, this was one of the one-shots from Black Hammer. This was another great. I think this was Eisner nominated. I don't think it won. Black Hammer did win the Ringo Award. That's kind of the Baltimore Comic-Con award that they have, and it won Best Series. And then lastly, actually, not lastly, but another one from Quantum Age, #1 as well. And then probably the two biggest ones I was happy to get signed by him. Gideon Falls #1. Sorry for the awful glare. I got signed by Jeff Lemire, and then also Black Hammer #1, the Eisner winning, and also Ringo Award winning series. Jeff Lemire probably is my favorite artist creator, I guess, artist and writer. I did try to have a conversation with him, but I failed miserably each time. So I mentioned Fantastic Four, and he's like, "Yeah, you should." I'm like, "Yeah, you kind of did with the Terrifics that he did," and I don't think he took that. I think he took offense to that, which was not my intention. I wasn't trying to say he copied a Fantastic Four, but I feel like that's the way it was taken, and yeah, I don't know. But he's a very nice guy. He was very quiet and laid back. Him and Matt Kent actually had a booth right next to one another. Other books I got signed, I got Usagi Yojimbo, #1 from The Hidden, and then also I bought this at Sam Sakai's table, the new series of IDW, #1 signed as well. It's such a sweet man, Sam Sakai is. He's such a very quiet man, but he was very nice as well. Him and I think his wife were there, and I've actually really enjoyed this. The Hidden series is really great. It's the last one he did for Dark Horse, and then this is a new book that's now for IDW. It's now in color, and I kind of do prefer the black and white, but it's kind of starting to win me over. On more the indie side as well, as I got some books signed by Sanford Green, who does the art for Bitter Root, which is one of my favorite series out right now. So I got a few books signed from him as well. This is a variant cover for #5. This is issue #1. And also got Excellence signed by him, which is a variant cover he did for issue #2. And then this is a variant for issue #3 of Bitter Root, which is a great cover and actually has a really great story behind it as well. He was talking about how the artist that did this cover, they actually found at New York Comic-Con. She came up with a portfolio of her stuff. They loved it. They thought it was fantastic. And she's like, "Do you think I have a future?" They're like, "Yeah, make us a cover." And so I think this was one of her first professional works. And it's a fantastic book. The art's a little bit different than the series, but it really fits the tone of the book. And it's very I would highly recommend picking up that series. It's this Monster Mash series that takes place in like 1920 Harlem Renaissance. It's a lot of fun, and Sanford Green's art is fantastic. He just fills the page. There's like not a moment wasted. Next person I got some books signed was from Greg Pak, who's there. He's not there every year, but he's been there more times than not. And I love getting a book signed by an artist that, or creator, or writer that they don't always see, or like, oh, they're happy to see that book because it's not the same book all the time now. And that was for Greg Pak. I got 1692, The New World 1 through 5 signed. I got these signed on Sunday. I got other books signed on Saturday. He was there every 3 days as well. Now that's the back of the book. Issue number 2. This is 4, and issue number 5. This was a series that took place after the Neil Gaiman 1602 series, which is one of my all-time favorite Marvel books. And following that up was always going to be a challenge. Is it to that level? I would say not, but I do like a lot of the ideas that are within that series. It was really, I think, early in the career of Greg Pak when it came to his Marvel stuff. But I do enjoy it, so it was kind of cool. He was very excited. He was like, "Oh, I haven't seen that in such a long time," so that was kind of cool. But I did get some more, cliche some stuff signed by him on Friday. I got Planet Hulk, or issue number 100, signed by him. This isn't the first issue of Planet Hulk, but this is Legion's Part 104, and issue over 100 of Planet Hulk, or just the Incredible Hulk series. And then also Scar, Son of Hulk, number 1, signed as well. I think this is the first appearance of Scar. I forget. I don't know if he showed up at the end of World War Hulk or not. And then I also got Agents of Atlas, number 1, The War of the Realms, signed by him. This was a new series that they started, and that now is an ongoing with a bunch of new characters. And I really like the idea of it, and a lot of the characters that they created. And I love the original Agents of Atlas. I guess not the original, but the Jeff Parker series that was done. In the start of the new series, they had a cool backup story that was done by Jeff Parker, which is a very different book, but still a lot of fun. I also got some books signed by Mark Waid. He's there every year. And it's funny because you have all these people that have these booths with tons of stuff in it. They have all these decorations, these huge banners. Mark Waid has just a bucket for Hero Initiative, and then him. He barely even has a sign, which is kind of funny. But I got Invisible Woman number 1 signed. I was hoping to get it signed by Adam Hughes as well because of the cover, but his line was crazy, and I just didn't have the time. And then I got some Archie 1941 signed by Mark Waid as well. This is issue number 3, issue number 2, and this is a series that takes place actually the first year that Archie came out, but kind of covers the life of what Archie would be like if it had a more realistic tone to it. Dealing a lot, as you can see, with 1941 and World War II. It's a pretty good series, and I think they have a 1955 out now, but it was he was a co-writer on it, but I'd recommend that, even if you're not a huge Archie fan. Also, I got some books signed by Brendan Fletcher, who's the writer for Isola, which is pronounced Isola because that's how he said it, so I know that's the right way to say it. This is, I think, the reprint of issue number 1. I forget, but this is the one I have. And some more covers from Isola. This is a series that, and he even said it because I asked, it's very inspired by someone like a Hayao Miyazaki type of world where you're following the soldier and a tiger the tiger is actually her queen, and you kind of visit this world. It's a world it's really, the comic itself is really heavily anchored on visual storytelling. It doesn't give you a lot. There's really no exposition whatsoever, so it might be a little bit challenging to read because you kind of have to let things go or just go with the story. But I was able to get some of the issues signed by him. The art in this is fantastic. Actually, I will take this out because it's worth looking at because it's one of the best looking books. When I first saw a preview of it, I was like, that looks like an animated still. It was so gorgeous, and that's kind of the look they're going for. They actually had a book on how they make the art, and it's an example of it. My camera's probably not even doing it justice, but it's gorgeous looking. It is taking an animated film and putting it in a comic book, but actually doing it right, so it doesn't look, there's actually great storytelling within just the fantastic coloring and character design. So I highly recommend picking up Isla if you haven't. I think trade is actually probably the better way to read it, because issue-wise, it's not the most fulfilling read, because usually you don't get a lot issue by issue, but when you do read it as a whole, it's a lot better. I think that's probably one of the biggest faults of the book, and it only comes out bi-monthly now. But if you read the first trade and you like it, I think you'll enjoy what comes next. The last two books are probably the books I stood in line with the most. I mentioned some people had really big lines that I wasn't able to, but I kind of bit the bullet on this one because I really wanted to get these signed, and I luckily got there early enough on Friday, so it wasn't on a big enough wait. But I got Mr. Miracle number 1, signed by Tom King and Mitch Gerads. One of my favorite series of this decade. I just love this book. I know some people don't, which is fine. I got issue number 1 and issue number 12 signed as well. Again, that's really bad glare. But for their line, you could get 2 books signed. After that, you had to pay. I did, or you could donate to Hero Initiative. But I went with these 2 because I went with number 1 and 12 because I thought it would bookend the series. Plus, both of these covers are done by Mitch. The other covers I have are not done by him. But I love this book, and they had a panel on Sunday that they were kind of dedicated to Mr. Miracle, but it ended up just being kind of a free-for-all Q&A session, which was fun, but it wasn't just about, really Mr. Miracle wasn't talked about much at all. But it was still a good panel. They're fun together. So those were all the books I got signed. Somewhat, actually, there were some books that I'll get to. I saved my favorite stuff for the last, and some of the books I did get signed. These next books are books I got that were kind of just cheap. They were more recent stuff, and stuff that I was interested in, but honestly it was like, I'm going to wait until I go to Baltimore Comic-Con, because I'm pretty sure I can get that at a much cheaper value, or just found it in the bin and I was interested in picking it up. So these are mostly all recent stuff. So this is starting with Marvel 1000, the big issue that came out not too long ago. I was happy to get this because I'm a huge Mike Allred fan, so I was happy to get the Mike Allred cover. And in fact, it only cost me $2 instead of $9 or $10 it was supposed to cost. So that was kind of cool. And I thought I'd read through it and see. I did go through it a little bit, but I haven't read it a lot of it. And then I thought about getting some. A lot of the creators that were on this book were at the panel or were at Baltimore Comic-Con, but I ended up just getting other books signed that I felt that had more meaning because there was stuff that they did, and I thought I had more interested in it. And since I don't know if this is good at all, I didn't know if I wanted to waste the time doing that. And then I also got to 1001, and I didn't even know they were doing more than one. But this is the fold-out cover of 1001, which is not a bad image. So I thought that was kind of cool. And again, it was only able to pick it up for $1 or $2. Another book I was happy to pick up. I did read the first issue of this and really enjoyed it, and I'm glad to pick up issue number 2. It's History of the Marvel Universe. This is also written by Mark Waid, but Javier Rodriguez is really the star of this book. I love his art. My favorite type of artists are those that when I pick up the book, there's a good chance I'll see something that I've never saw before in a comic book, and that's kind of the case with him. He uses really creative angles. His panel design is very dynamic. He did a lot of fantastic work in Exiles, the new series that not nearly enough people read, unfortunately. But this kind of retells the history of the Marvel Universe. The first issue was more pre-history, the start of it. Now this is getting into the actual beginning of the series, so I'm excited to read this. I think issue 4 just came out this past week, but it's been a great book, and I was curious about it, and then Mark Waid is the type of person that do something like that because he is so well versed into the lore of something like Marvel. Again, another one that's mostly a cover buy because I actually have this, but I love this cover. This is issue number 4 of War of the Realms. This was a second printing variant. It looks very Thor-esque and it seems like it's very influenced by the recent film. Who knows? But I think it's a really cool cover that I was able to pick up for $1, so that's kind of cool. I also got Ghostwriter number 1. This is the most recent series. I do like Ghostwriter when he's written well. I enjoyed actually Jason Aaron's run on Ghostwriter was a lot of fun. So being able to pick this up for $1, I thought I'd give it a whirl, take a look at it. So it was kind of cool. This is an issue that I read digitally, but I have not read. I don't have the physical book, so I was happy to pick it up. It's one of my it's up there as one of my favorite issues of the year, strangely enough, even though it's a event tie-in book, but it's War of the Realms, Strikeforce, Land of the Giants. This is written by Tom Taylor, and This is worth reading just for the horse joke involving Spider-Man alone. I'll just say that. I won't say anything else. But Tom Taylor is having an incredible year. I enjoyed War of the Realms, and they kind of came together and read this. Actually, read this as I was in the hospital, and my son was being born. It was after he was born. It was not during, but it's a fun series. It's them going Captain America and Spider-Man and Luke Cage and Wolverine going to fight the Land of the Giants. So it's a cool little book. It's a much better book than it has any deserve being. Next series, again, this falls into a series I was interested in. Haven't picked up yet, but was happy to get there. Is Punisher Kill Crew. I guess kind of also tying in to War of the Realms. I did enjoy the Punisher series, miniseries that was part of War of the Realms, but again, the big reason I'm interested in this is, I'm going to say his name wrong, but it's Juan Fiera. I'm probably saying that wrong, but he is, again, one of my favorite artists right now that's doing work for Marvel. He did another book that I'll get to in a second that I really enjoyed. Another one that has really great dynamic panels, and it's a type of style that is perfect for someone like the Punisher. It's not very superhero-esque in that way, especially in his coloring, but I love his work, so I was really happy to get this. I also picked up issue number 2, so really excited to read these. Another series he did earlier in the year. I had the first 3 issues, but don't have issue 5, but I was able to pick up issue 4 while I was there of Killmonger. This series was great. Again, this was written by Brian Edward Hill with art by Fiera, and it goes into the prehistory of kind of the origin of Killmonger. I thought it was just going to be this generic tie-in to the movie, trying to milk that, and maybe that's the idea, but it ended up being a really fantastic book. Very almost more crime-esque. Michael Mann, in the comic book form, it's how it kind of read to me, which makes sense because Brian Edward Hill, he also he dabbles in movies and stuff like that too. He's also having another great year, but I thought this was a fantastic series. I would highly recommend picking up the trade if you haven't. Some DC books. Picked up Batman: Curse of the White Knight number 2. Again, these were only $1, so that was kind of cool because I enjoyed the first issue. I haven't read the other 2, so I was able to pick up issue 2 and 3, and that's always fun. So those are mostly picking up because I want to read them. The next few are kind of books I got because of the cover. I'm not a person that buys a comic for a cover unless I can get it for a really cheap price. So this is DC's A Good Day to Die number 1 variant, the crazy zombie variants that they do. Also, I've really enjoyed DC's. I didn't think a zombified DC story would actually work, but Tom Taylor has actually put a lot of heart in that book, and I would highly recommend it if you're a person that dismissed it thinking this is just a cheap ploy and we're already over zombies. Maybe give it a look because you might enjoy it. Some Flash covers. This is a cover for Flash number 56. The tinfoil, very gimmicky, very 90s. And I've read a good amount of the Williamson run. I loved his year 1, so I've kind of been going back and picking up issues here and there that I find. This is issue number 76. Again, another cool cover that I was able to pick up. And these are all kind of in the $1 bins or $2 bins. One of my favorite issues of the year, and it's been a running theme, is actually Batman issue number 67, and I got the variant for that. I know this was part of the Nightmare arc from the King run, which I know a lot of people hated, and I didn't love every issue, but I love this issue. This was with art by Lee Weeks and Jorge Fornes, and it's just one gigantic chase, and it is gorgeous visual storytelling. Lee Weeks is a great artist, but so is Jorge Fornes. He did a Hot Lunch special last year, and he's been doing a lot of Marvel work. He did a issue of Daredevil recently, and I just love his style. And I was happy to see him, and it actually works well with Lee Weeks too. So it's a really fun issue. And then a couple other issues of Batman that I was able to pick up as well. This is issue 68 and 69. I also picked up the variant for issue number 1 of Jimmy Olsen. I have the regular version, but the variant was $1, so I picked it up. This has been a fantastically fun series. Matt Fraction, it's been kind of crazy. It's a lot of just vignettes that are seems like they're very inspired by the Silver Age. just randomly fun things happening, and some darker stuff too here and there. But it's been a really great book that I think a lot of people aren't really talking about, unfortunately. Maybe because it's Jimmy Olsen, so they're like, who cares about Jimmy Olsen? But if you liked Fraction's run on Hawkeye, I think you would like the sense of humor of this book as well. Some more variants that I picked up that I, again, just like the variants, is a Supergirl number 34. I've not really read any of the recent Supergirl runs, so I can't really speak to the quality of the book. Batgirl number 38 variant. Did enjoy that. I'm not always the biggest fan of just like the character cover that you can kind of put on any issue, but again, for $1 it works. Also picked up some of the Catwoman variants. I know this one was, a lot of people are talking about it. Very, Selena Kyle from Batman Returns inspired. Actually, I've really enjoyed this series overall. I know Ram V wrote this issue, just the Secret Shores, or he's done some work for Vault, and Joelle Jones, I guess, is maybe off the book. I was reading it when she was doing it, but I have not read it since then, but I heard good stuff about that issue, which is issue 15. This is issue 13, which is done by Joelle Jones, who unfortunately I think stopped doing the art, and that was kind of my biggest selling point, because I love her art style, but I don't think this is all her art. It looks somewhat similar to it, but I was a huge fan of her stuff for she did for Dark Horse, and I think she's a fantastic artist. I think some of her issues of Batman are great as well, so I was happy when she got that Catwoman series. Another variant for Catwoman as well. Another, I think it's Archie. I'm not the hugest Archie fan. I like some of his stuff. I do feel like often his stuff for Catwoman tends to work the best. I just feel like with Archie, he's a fantastic artist, there's no doubt, but I like more storytelling in my covers, and I don't necessarily think you always get that with him, or storytelling in reference to the issue that is on hand. And for a lot of his covers, you can kind of put it on any issue, and it would be, and it would work. So for a variant, it's fine, but when people talk about their favorite covers, that's typically what I prefer. See, these are other variant issues that I picked up. This one is issue for Analog number 1, which is a series I've liked. I don't own the physical copies of it. Sorry if you heard a beeping sound. There's apparently a truck outside. And then some other variants I picked up. Venom as well. I actually have a Hulk that I'll get to that has a very similar background. I thought it was kind of a cool comparing image. Guardians of the Galaxy number 1, the Groot variant. I was happy to pick this up because I actually don't own any of this series, because when I went to my local comic book store to get Guardians of the Galaxy number 1, that was already sold out, and I thought I had it in my pull, but I didn't, so I haven't been able to. I've been reading it digitally, but I didn't own the physical copy, so I was happy to pick up the variant of it. Another Year of the Villain variant. This was this 25-cent comic they did. This is one of the variants that they had. And then the last variant I got was from Secret Weapons number 1. This is a great book from Vault, one of my favorite Vault titles over the last few years. So it was a pretty solid variant. Again, very different than some of the other books, but really enjoyed that series. So those are kind of all the more recent stuff. So now we get into more of the classic comics I got. Nothing super old or anything like that. I think the oldest I got was maybe the 70s or the 80s. But I picked up some Moon Knight covers. I've really loved a lot of Moon Knight, but I realized I didn't read a lot of the original series. This is a Sienkiewicz cover, which is just great. I love Sienkiewicz, so I was happy to pick that up. And also really like this Moon Knight cover as well. Just a cool image. There's something about a guy standing next to a bunch of buildings. You see that image a lot, especially with Batman, but I just like it for the Moon Knight. I was happy to get some Walt Simonson Thor. It's got a couple issues of that. Again, these are nothing really huge key-wise, but issue 350, issue 362, and I don't know if this is the Executioner's Last Stand or not. Imagery, the cover makes me think so, but I've only read it really in trade, so I'm not sure how it plays out issue-wise. I guess this is somewhat people care about first appearances, but this is 344, and this is also, sorry for the bad glare, this is also, I think, the first appearance of Malekith, who was kind of an awful villain in the movies, and I also don't think he's the most dynamic villain in the comics either, even in this series, even though the Thor's run is legendary. But in Tomlinson's run is legendary. Malekith has never been a villain I cared that much about, but I'm just trying to collect as much as his run as I can get. Also got some Hulk issues. I just love this cover, and trying to collect some more older Hulk books. This is 354. It's hard though because of Immortal Hulk. A lot of Hulk books are like now skyrocketed in price, and I'm not going to do that. This is issue number 325. Again, this is similar to that Venom variant that I was showing you earlier. And I talked about Sienkiewicz, and one of his most iconic stories, the Demon Bear. Got that issue as well from the New Mutants. Again, such a fantastic cover. I think that story kind of has defined New Mutants. Happy to pick this up because I own part 2 of the series. I haven't owned part 1, but now I do. It's Incredible Hulk, Future Imperfect number 1, part 1. I have part 2. I was happy to get part 1, only for $5 or so. No, even less than that. I forget. It was like 3 for $10. So I was happy to pick that up. These are probably now the favorite things I picked up. Again, I told you I didn't get anything huge, but I love this cover. I think it's one of the most iconic in the history of the Avengers, or at least image-wise, and that's the Hawkeye with Ant-Man on his arrow, replicated in the movies, but it's a great image, so enjoy that. I'm also trying to stack out my Avengers run a little bit more. It's one of the comics I have the most of, but the series I've really been focusing on a lot. I don't know why, but Daredevil is one of my favorite characters. Probably at this point, maybe my favorite character. Captain America is right there, but the consistency of the amount of fantastic Daredevil stuff. I love the current run, and of course the Miller run. So I was able to pick up a few issues in that. And these actually got signed too. I mentioned I got books signed. I also got these signed at the con by Klaus Janson, which is kind of a funny story. Not funny, more kind of stunk because I was in line, and right when he was getting back, he's coming back from panel, so I was first person in line. Got my book signed, I was ready to go, and then the lady comes up and is like, "Okay, well, we're charging $10 per signature, so that'll be $20." And I had no idea he was charging for signatures. Some people were. But it was like suddenly at $20, I did not know I was going to be spending. I am now spending because he already signed them, and there was no sign saying that he was charging. But it was like whatever. I mean, he's a legend, and I understand that when it comes to the comic book world, they don't have the best retirement plan. So I was fine paying, but it was just one of those things where it's like, wow, I was not expecting that. But I got issue 190 signed by him. I picked up at the con as well. I have some other issues, but I didn't have them on me, so I got that one signed. But this is probably my favorite pickup that I have. Again, it's not a huge, key issue for anyone, but it's just one of my favorite covers. Vault actually did a really great variant of this for their Friendor run, and it's, I think people know the imagery of it, but it's Daredevil number 184, the classic kind of Dirty Harry Daredevil signed by Klaus Janson. Sorry, it's kind of in Mylar, so it's hard. It's very, very blurry, very shiny. But I was really happy to get that signed. I love that run. It's one of my all-time favorite, like many runs from Marvel. I think one that kind of defined the character of Daredevil, and one they've been trying to replicate, but doing it so in some reason it works. From Bendis' run to Brubaker's run, even I think Charles Soule's run was pretty great as well. So there's something about Daredevil that just works as a character. I think it's just how the utilization of his faith against his need to be Daredevil. You just get a lot out of that for some reason. I don't know, but he's given us some of the greatest character moments within Marvel, and it just continues to be that way. So I was happy to pick this up, and I own a lot of Miller's run, not the whole thing, but a lot of the big moments within that book, and it's one that I go back to time and time again. So that's why I was happy to pick up that issue. It was only like $10 or so. So I personally don't like spending more than $20 when it comes to picking up comics. It's just how I am. Just hard for me to justify that. So that one I was happy to get. But that's pretty much all the comics I picked up and got signed at the con this year. I didn't get as many as I did in the past, just the way it worked out. I spent a lot of time in line getting signed stuff by Tom King, maybe that's why. But another successful year, I'll be doing a blog post where I go more in depth into the different panels I was able to go to. I was able to go to the Jim Lee panel, I was able to go to the Brian K. Vaughan panel, as well as a few others. I didn't get to as many as I would like. It's a lot later in the year, so some of the key panels they typically have. They didn't have a Valiant panel, which was sad to see. They didn't have a Marvel or DC panel, which was unfortunate. But they did have some good ones that I'll talk about in that blog post at Geekcast Radio. But I was happy to pick up the books I did. If you went, there's a lot of great cosplay. If you check out my Instagram, I've been taking images and pictures of some of the best cosplay I saw, as well as some of the other books my friends got that I went down with. If you listen to Talking in Circles, Greg and Chuck, who did that podcast with, I went down and they got some great books as well. Probably better stuff than me. If anything, I should be doing this because their hauls were more impressive than mine. But anyways, I've rambled on enough. This is running over 30 minutes, so if you stayed this long, I do appreciate it. Check out my stuff at Geekcast Radio. You can also see some of my reviews at comiccrusaders.com as well as Nerdly. You can find it all there. But until then, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time.